G'day everyone, Aussie Dollar Man here. Welcome to another episode of Aussie Dollar Insights. A fairly flat, if slightly bullish week on the Australian dollar this week. I do maintain my bullish bias on the Aussie dollar. I'll talk about that in this episode. Plus, I'll also look at the next resistance level that I see on the Aussie dollar, both in terms of time and price, and an interesting way to connect those two together. In this episode, I'm going to be taking you through a review of last week's Aussie dollar US dollar market action, followed by a preview for the week ahead and some more tunnel through the air training. This time, we're going to be looking at the Bible. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. This video is designed to be educational in nature only and shouldn't be taken as a recommendation or as trading investing advice. So we'll start with the Australian dollar review. You can see here, this is a daily chart of the week's action. I always like to look at multiple charts side by side. You can see a 4-hour chart over here. We'll get to that in a moment. But here's the week's action. You can see we closed last week just below that 63.50 level. And throughout the week, pushed up, pushed down, pushed up, pushed down. We had a bit of a spike up on Thursday. Most of those gains were given back on Friday. Interesting though, we've hit that 37.5% retracement level on the ranges resistance card from our monthly swing chart. Now that's no coincidence. As I've been pointing out to you, we were hammering into this 25% milestone just a couple of weeks ago. Now we've come to the next milestone and we've stopped there as well. So what that's telling us are that simply these milestones are in play. Now, that could be it for our weekly run-up. Remember, this is all one weekly run-up. We'll talk about that in a moment. On the way down, we did have a couple of days down during the week, and this looked like a really strong low and like we were going to push on and really kick on to the upside. However, on Friday, we started turning down, and then while it mucked around a little bit, it then kicked on in the early hours of Saturday morning, and we ended up finishing quite low and very close to where we started the week there. Now, if you've been following the channel, you'll know that on these ranges resistance cards, you can use them on small moves, medium moves, big moves. But if the market retraces more than 75% of a move, in my experience, it tends to keep going and it will go back to the base and usually further through there. So we're in a very precarious position here because while we had a good, strong, higher bottom here on the daily chart and really on the 2-day swing chart as well, we didn't go up very far, and now we're retracing quite heavily. If we could hold 75% there and continue up, we could expect to see some more upside on Monday. However, given that we've hit a resistance point there, not a bad place to be tightening up your stop losses. I'm going to be talking more about that in just a moment. But let's have a look at the bigger picture. I love having a monthly, a weekly, and a daily chart side by side. Really, really good way to get a feel for the market. If you try and follow a market just based on one swing chart time frame alone, you're going to find it difficult. But side by side, you can often see the big picture pretty clearly. This is using TradingView software. There's a link to that in the description if you're interested. But using TradingView, if you use the free version, you can actually use most of the tools, but you can't have multiple charts side by side like this. I guess technically you can always open multiple windows and go from there, but I like to have them all organized side by side, and I can flick between, say, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 6 charts all lined up together. Here you can see the monthly chart. That was all one monthly swing down here. And this month of February 2025, we had that big February low come in. We've rallied hard from there up to this 37.5% retracement. Now that has all happened in one move on the weekly chart. So I don't think that that's the end of the monthly swing. I think that there's more to come. But at some point that weekly swing is going to end and we'll have a pullback. Maybe it ends here. Maybe it goes a little bit higher this week. We'll see. We'll talk about the dates to watch a little bit later in this episode. But looking at the daily chart here, well, we've had a good strong run up and then a little bit of sideways, a weaker run up, a little bit of sideways, and now a weaker run up again. There's several signs of weakness there. Again, if we can't hold that 75% level, I'd say that's a weekly top, and we're going to have a little bit of a pullback here. Now, if we pull back to either the 25 or the 12.5% level, do the maths. If we pull back to, say, the 25% milestone, well, this is 0 to 37.5% of the previous range. If you add that to 25, you're going to get 62.5% as a target. If you add it to 12.5, 50% is going to be your next target there. So that will be interesting to see if it pulls back from here, how far back it does go. So that's the week in review. Not a lot happened there. As I said, it was fairly flat. Let's have a look at the forecast now. I think I've been pretty clear on my opinion on the Australian dollar since early February. I called it. I still haven't seen anyone else call it, by the way, that it is going up. Obviously, I don't follow every channel and every news media source out there, but I was pretty confident. I'm still very confident that we are going up. I don't think it's a yearly bottom. We're going to look at some prices that would potentially prove that it's a yearly bottom. I don't think it is. I think we're running up into a lower top on that monthly chart. And then, as Terry Silver said in the third Karate Kid movie, now the real pain begins, Danny Boy. But substitute Danny Boy for the Australian dollar. That if you get a monthly lower top, particularly if it comes in the position I'm going to show you in a moment, but if you get that lower top on the monthly chart, it could be a lot more downside on the Australian dollar. We're starting to see some negative news creeping out economically. It has been coming for a while, so could be an interesting couple of years. A great time to be learning how to trade and how to master the techniques of WD Gann. Here's the chart that I was referring to. You can see that's our 2020 to 2021 massive bull market there. That was the bounce out of the COVID crash low in March of 2020. See, we're sitting on that 75% milestone. So technically, if we go back down through that level, I would say we're at least going to 55 cents and probably more to the downside. So there would be a fair bit more. But we have sat on 75% and we've put in a strong rally so far. So I'm watching it with interest. I'm never locked in. I always have forecasts for small term, medium term, long term, very long term, but I'm never locked into them. I'm just looking at one swing at a time. So we're currently moving up at the moment. I think I made that clear. And we'll see how far that goes. On the weekly chart, we're in our first weekly swing. So there's probably going to be another one after that. So I'm not looking for a top just yet. And I'll talk about when that is shortly. But as we go up, we retrace 75%. That 50% milestone, Gann talks about it as being very, very important. He says you can make a fortune trading off the 50% level alone. If we run up and we fail around that 50% milestone, as I discussed in last week's episode of Aussie Dollar Insights, that could see a very big fall in the Australian dollar from there. It would give us a monthly lower top. That level also coincides with a 75% retracement on the monthly chart. So that doesn't mean that the market must go there, but there's a few things starting to point to that level. So it would be an interesting one to watch. Also of interest, note that firstly, we're reacting to these milestones. So if we reacted at 25 and 37.5, should we get up to 75%? Well, obviously that's an area that we would expect the market to react at. But secondly, if we put in a decent top here at 37.5%, what proportion of any move from a low here in February up to 75%, what proportion would we have traveled to get to this intermediate top if we did get an intermediate top here? Well, it would be 50%. It's a halfway point. Gann said that tops and bottoms in the market can often become halfway points. He said that in the commodities course. And basically, if we make a top there and then we break that top and go higher, well, that top could become a halfway point leading to 75%. And I've got one more piece to show you on that a little later in the presentation. Let's look at the economic calendar. Not a huge amount. There are German elections at the moment or over the weekend, but Wednesday is the first big news for the Australian dollar. That's our CPI figures coming out. Obviously, inflation is a little bit of a flavor of the month at the moment. Everyone's talking about it, so that would be one to watch. Previous was 2.5%. This is CPI year on year. Forecast is for it to go a little bit higher. Now, that's interesting in itself because that would be within the RBA's 2 to 3% band. I'd find it very hard to believe, you'd have to dig into that calculation and fiddle with it a fair bit to say that CPI, compared to where it was last year, is only 2.6%. Prices just seem to rise all the time, and I think in general, most of the stuff out there is going up a lot more than 2.6%. Anyway, that's coming out, and we'll see how the market reacts to that. The other piece of news coming out on Friday, well, it's really Thursday night Sydney time, Friday morning Sydney time, 12:30 a.m. You've got the preliminary GDP quarter on quarter for the US. So we'll get a bit of a sense of how strong the US economy actually is and where it might go from there. In terms of dates to watch for this week, again, I'm not going to go through all of them. You can check out my video from mid-December last year, where I gave out a forecast up to and including the middle of March. But for this week, the two dates that I'm watching are the 24th of February and the 1st of March. So potentially, if we run up into a little lower top there, that lower top could serve as our 24 Feb high and then a run down into the 1st of March. That wouldn't be too bad, but it will depend on what size run down we get and whether we break these lows here. If we just go sideways, and you do get that sometimes in bull markets, if we just run down sort of down sideways into a 1 March low. Will there be more upside from there? I'm leaning towards that being a small to medium term top. It wouldn't surprise me if that becomes a weekly swing top there, but we should know by about Tuesday what's going on there with this move on the Australian dollar. Now, in terms of longer term dates, I spoke about this and I nominated this early Feb period for a major turn on the Aussie dollar all the way back in December last year, and we got that major Feb low. The next sort of medium-sized turn on the Australian dollar I saw around the middle of March. So that's this trading window here. I've got a rectangle tool on there. Obviously, this is a date here, and that's another date here. So going across horizontally, that's our time window. In terms of price, I like this 50%, 62.5%, and 75%, so I can box that in as a little bit of a target, and we can wait and see if the market makes a top anywhere in this rectangle. Well, that could be that next intermediate turn. And look, depends what happens. If we get a down week and then another up week, and then we get a top here, that would be a monthly swing top, and that would be it, and we're ready to start going down. And being a monthly lower top, it could make for a very long and painful bear market on the Aussie dollar. Painful for those who aren't shorting the bear market. However, if we run up another couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, and this is all one weekly upswing into this level, well, I wouldn't suggest that that's a monthly top because it's still one weekly swing. So from there, I'd be looking for the run down to the next medium date to maybe give us a higher bottom and then have more upside there. However, as I said, it wouldn't surprise me if that is a monthly top. So again, I'll be on guard for a pullback on the weekly chart this week before more upside. One last thing I'll throw into the puzzle here is a trend line. Let's say, for argument's sake, March 14, which is a Friday, which is roughly where my big picture target is. Let's say the market gets up to the 75% milestone. If we run a trend line from this low up to there, we know, and you can do this for yourself, if you run a trend line from the start to the end of most moves in the market, you'll see the market reacting to that trend line throughout the move. Let's have a look if the market reacts to that trend line throughout that move. Well, interestingly, if we run from that February low up to the imaginary target, up at that point there, because that's all it is at the moment, it's an imaginary target, but drawing a line from that low, and I've only just put that on there without calculating it in advance, I've just drawn from the low up to that as an imaginary high. It's interesting, it cuts through this daily swing low here. We sit on it there, we sit on it there, and it's basically where our current top is at. So the market is tracking that trend line pretty nicely. So again, if we end up at this point around Friday the 14th of March, it could be a very nice top to trade because it's a bigger picture cycle, as I said, and it would run down for at least a month from that point. Again, that form reading work that I've done and I've spoken about before, you can learn more about that from Gann's book, How to Make Profits in Commodities, or from where I learned as a student in Safety in the Markets Active Trader program that you can see from that website there. All right, that's all for the Australian dollar. Let's move on now into our tunnel through the air training. For those who are new to the channel, firstly, welcome. I hope you subscribe and join us. I try and give the best info out that I can each week, both in terms of training and market insights. But in this part of the Aussie Dollar Insights, we're going to be looking at W.D. Gann's novel, The Tunnel Through the Air. Previously, we've looked at things like the ephemeris and generating an ephemeris and using the planets that way and using a piece of software called SolarFire Gold. We've also looked at a numerology calculator. These are ways for digging into Gann's book, The Tunnel Through the Air. Obviously not for the faint-hearted and not for those who don't have some background knowledge in that work by reading Gann's list. If you don't have any background knowledge at all, there's a couple of videos on the channel. Just check out the Guidance for Gann Researchers playlist on this channel. You can see my recommended research list and my recommendations for how to start decoding Gann's book, The Tunnel Through the Air. But today we're going to be looking at Gann's book, Tunnel Through the Air, through the lens of the Bible. If you do want to study tunnel, you're going to need to go through it several times. I've recorded it as an audiobook. You can find that as a playlist on this channel. There are 38 videos there. It runs for 687 minutes. So today we're going to start looking at the Bible. In the foreword to Tunnel Through the Air, right at the beginning, Gann tells us to read the Bible 3 times and you will know why it is the greatest book ever written. However, he says to read Tunnel Through the Air 3 times first to learn some stuff about cycles, and then to go and learn more by reading the Bible. So you've got to master Tunnel Through the Air first. Obviously, if you're a religious person, as I am, it can be a little bit confronting to be told, go and read the Bible, because there are market secrets in there. I don't look at it as market secrets. I look at it as laws of nature. And when I look at this stuff, when I see some of Gann's discoveries, Gann wasn't the creator, but Gann discovered, and he put some of them into print, obviously in coded form in Tunnel Through the Air. But when I see these things and these rhythms in the market and these techniques working, to me, it's just a sign that there is a higher power in play, that there is a creator who created all of this, and we're just seeing a few fingerprints of the creator in the work that we're doing. And it makes me more faithful, more religious, if anything, rather than less. Even for those of you who don't have any faith, and that's fine as well, I'm not here to tell you what to believe, but even for those who don't have any faith, you will start to see some things and it will start to raise some questions for you. From our point of view, we're going to be looking at the Bible through Gann's Bible quotes that he has inserted all the way through the Tunnel Through the Air. So as an example, here is the foreword to Tunnel Through the Air, and there are 3 Bible quotes on this particular page. Gann says, when you read it a third time, the new light will dawn. You'll find the hidden secret, etc. And you will understand why the Bible says, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Next quote, you will appreciate why Solomon said, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Finally, we don't have a direct quote, but we have a reference. Why Jesus rose on the 3rd day and rested on the 7th day. Also, Robert Gordon's 7 days there's a whole chapter on that later. That's probably important as well. But this is one way that Gann puts Bible references into Tunnel Through the Air. So you may want to look these up, and I'll show you how I do it in just a moment. It's very quick. Another way that Gann inserts Bible quotes into Tunnel Through the Air is by giving you the actual chapter and verse. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because sometimes he will give you the chapter and the verse, but the quote will be different or wrong. And you have to ask yourself, well, did he make a mistake, or is he trying to tell us something here? Let's start with the first of these quotes. Seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. If you're a student of the Bible, you should know that's Matthew chapter 7, verse 7. Is Gann trying to tell us something important about the number 7 here? Or is he just giving us some really good advice, which is ask and it is given to you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. So I use a website called BibleGateway.com. It's a fantastic site for all your Bible research. You can search different versions of the Bible and you can jump to a specific chapter or verse very, very quickly rather than having to thumb through 1,500 pages to get there. Or you can search keywords or phrases so it's very quick to find references that Gann has put into the Bible. But let's go back to our Matthew 7:7. Here it is. Ask and it shall be given you. Seek and you shall find. In this case, I knew the reference. I knew it was 7:7, so I didn't need to look it up. I just typed in up the top here, Matthew 7, and I was able to click on that link. I use the King James Version. It appears to be what Gann was using in Tunnel Through the Air, but I could type that in directly and it brings me straight to the relevant part. However, what if I didn't know the chapter and the verse? Well, that's where you can do a keyword search or a phrase search. So Gann quoted Solomon, wisdom is the principal thing. So I just typed that in there. There's only one result, so that means we probably found the right one. There's the quote, Proverbs 4, verse 7, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Now again, is Gann just trying to impart some wisdom here and saying that wisdom is important and that we should seek wisdom, seek knowledge? Or is the verse itself important? What about these numbers? There's that number 7 again. What's Gann trying to tell us here? Now that's been an introduction to the Bible and Tunnel Through the Air. What I would suggest that you do on one reading of Tunnel Through the Air, remember we're already doing readings of Tunnel where we're looking at the numerology behind what Gann is saying, or where we're looking at the astronomy or the astrology behind what he's saying. Now we're bringing in another layer, which is the Bible as well. So you're not going to do these all in one hit. But when you get to this point, you can start looking at the Bible verses and noting them down and seeing what you find there. And again, the way that I do that, I use the website. It's a free website, BibleGateway.com. And you can search by chapter and verse or by book, or you can search by phrase or quote as well. Thanks for watching Aussie Dollar Insights. I hope you enjoyed it and found some value there. If you're interested in the Australian dollar or the FX markets in general, and in particular in the works of W.D. Gann, there's plenty on this channel for you, and there's plenty more still to come. Subscribe and turn notifications on if you want to keep up with the latest analysis and updates. I'll see you next week on Sunday, the 2nd of March, 2025 at 7 p.m. Until then, all the best with your trading. Bye for now.